Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show, live entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. Hope everybody's doing well today. So nice to see all your smiley faces. And thanks so much for joining us here on the program. We are very blessed and we are honored to welcome an icon in entertainment in Hollywood. We have Hollywood royalty on our show. Katharine Kat Kramer is here on the Jim Masters Show live series. We are very blessed to have her here because she has graced us with the time and generous time that we're going to be sharing with all of you, but also some absolutely epic stories and projects that she's working on. She is an iconic and acclaimed and celebrated actress. She's a journalist. She's a producer. She's a filmmaker. She's an inclusion leader. She's a singer. And she's a lover of life. And when I say Hollywood royalty, her entire family has been responsible for decades of some of the most iconic pieces of art that you could have ever seen on your screen, whether it's the movie screen or it is your small screen at home. I am talking about major movies, and we're going to be celebrating that. We're also going to be celebrating the charitable side of our very special guest. She's warm, she's compassionate, she's empathetic, she cares about people, and a lot of Kat's work is surrounded by inclusion and equity and lifting people up and bringing people together. And boy, we certainly need that, right? So a lot of her projects reflect that inner wisdom and heart and passion that she has that I think is such a beautiful thing and something very refreshing too. Again, our very special guest coming to us from the West Coast, from California, is Katharine Kat Kramer. And we'll tell you, if you don't know the story about how she got Kat, we'll tell you in a minute. It does tie to the beloved iconic actress Katharine Hepburn, who actually Kat is Katharine Hepburn's goddaughter and namesake. Yeah, the Katharine comes from Katharine Hepburn. We'll tell you about all that. But in addition to all of her work as a spectacular actress and singer and fabulous journalist, filmmaker, producer, and so much more, documentarian, she's also the founder of Kat's Films That Changed the World, which is an international cinema series to showcase motion pictures and documentaries and so much more. And that is something absolutely special. We're going to be talking about that because that is near and dear to her heart. And she's involved in a lot of other cool things we're going to celebrate. But first, let's tell you about some of the things that might trigger your memory of movies, television shows, and series that she's been a part of. This will trigger your memory. Take a look at this. You've seen her in Going Shopping, Hollywood Dreams, and of course, What Just Happened. Just some of the movies that she's been a part of and graced our screens in. The Little Fockers, with look at all of the incredible talent that was a part of that as well. And Fate's Shadow and Rings of the Unpromised. She was in that as well. And Katharine Kramer, also in Turnover. I want to talk a lot about that because there's ways you can see it on Amazon and Tubi and so much more. And of course, this critically acclaimed Mother's Day Memories. We're going to talk about that as well. And on television, child of the 70s. She's made appearances on Larry King Live, and we miss Larry so much. She was wonderful. And of course, she did the fabulous Netflix special, Call Me Kate, celebrating the life of Katharine Hepburn, her godmother, and also Actors and Actors Entertainment. She's been a part of that as well. Now, she comes from a long line of incredible, talented individuals in Hollywood. Her father is responsible for some of the most iconic, beloved, and thought-provoking and beautiful movies of all time. Some of those on the list are some of my personal favorites. I'm talking about the epic, iconic film producer, director extraordinaire, Stanley Kramer. Stanley Kramer is her beloved father. And he had an ability to capture life in such such a deep way, the idiosyncrasies of life, bringing people together, celebrating life, but also showcasing some of the craziness of life as well. What do I mean? How about these movies? Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Yes, that's a Stanley Kramer production. It's a mad, mad, mad world. I laugh every time I say the title because I'm thinking of Buddy Hackett and Milton Berle and everybody that was in that one. Yeah, and of course, Judgment at Nuremberg. That's one of the most iconic movies of all time, riveting. And that is just some of the very, very incredible movies that he's responsible for. Also, in addition to all of that, her mother, Karen Sharpe, Golden Globe winning actress. Yes. And Karen, who is a picture of effervescence, if I ever saw it myself, she's a spectacular actress. She happens to also be right beside her lovely daughter, Kat, because she is her manager. She's working on a lot of projects with Kat together, and I think it's a beautiful relationship. But you may remember as well that Karen Sharpe Kramer was in The High and Mighty with a whole cast, of course, of incredible people. John Smith there in that picture, Golden Globe winning. Absolutely. And so many other incredible productions. Stanley Kramer, going back to Stanley, was responsible for this, talking about nuclear war on the beach and talking about creationism versus evolution in this, of course, is Hollywood gold. Inherit the Wind. How about Bless the Beasts and the Children? Yeah, these are all family productions. The Kramers, I tell you, it's really incredible. You're probably saying, wow, this is quite amazing. It absolutely is. And again, the love that Kat and her mother, Karen, have is really something very, very special, very, very deep, and very, very beautiful. They were in Fate's Shadow as well. And I want to let you know, you may remember this, that early on, our epic guest was in The Diary of Anne Frank. Yes. And she also was Helen Keller on the stage production of The Miracle Worker, which was absolutely extraordinary. Yeah. She was also, again, this is just the short list, folks, back in 1990, Miss Golden Globe Ambassador. Yes. She's very, very busy, and we're so honored to have the time with her here. And as I mentioned, Kat Kramer's films that change the world. And look at some of the incredible productions that she has celebrated. I'm going to talk about that. That is near and dear to her heart. So is this. She Rose for Change. We're going to talk about that as well. In addition, she performs on stage. Matter of fact, she's done stand-up comedy as well. You might not have realized that. Started doing some of that during the pandemic. And she also has done on stage my duet with Mick. She's had a wonderful experience with Mick Jagger. Yeah, we're going to talk about what that is. Some really fantastic photos and all kinds of cool things that we have here for you. She also is a spectacular singer. And Gemstone is a work of art because Kat sings Mick Jagger and Keith Richards on this album. And some really cool behind the scenes shots of everything as it was happening. Yeah, really cool stuff. We don't want to show everything now, but just teasing you with a little of the incredible glory that she's been a part of. It's really something very, very special. So that's just a little of the background. I want to tell you just a little bit more as well. She does the one-woman shows. She is the godchild and the namesake of screen icon Katharine Hepburn, of course, who we love. And as a matter of fact, our very special guest is also on the board and also is the West Coast representative for the Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, which is a spectacular venue. If you ever visit Old Saybrook, Connecticut, there it is. And she is the West Coast representative for this spectacular venue where lots of great folks. Lucy Arnez has been there. Melissa Manchester has performed there, and so many others. So yeah, she is a part of that. She has her hands in literally everything. And again, she's a real blessing to have on our show. So let's welcome to the Jim Masters Show without further ado, because there's a lot more I can do in an intro, but we want to bring her on so she can share some of this with us as well. And wait to see her fabulous background too. She put a lot of time and effort into her background, productions, what it's all about. The incomparable Katharine Kat Kramer joining us here on the Jim Masters Show live.
Oh my gosh, Jim. Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, you do amazing with your homework, but I cannot possibly live up to that introduction. No, I mean, I think
it's all you
to replace me, right?
I know, right? Well, you know, it's funny.
I have to live up to, seriously. And I'm just amazed that you, like I said, did all that homework. And yes, the background is my Cat comedy logo, as you can see. And yes. I think we need to laugh, and we need comedy, and we need humor more than ever, especially, you know, right now at this period of history. So that's one of the reasons I really went all the way with it during the pandemic. I mean, I'd done sketch comedy and part of a comedy, a double act sometimes, because I've done so much live performing, but I just decided to try the stand-up thing because, first of all, it's very hard. I'll tell you, it's really the hardest thing I've ever done. But just because I feel, and at the time during the pandemic, you know, I feel now still that we need this. And it's kind of amazing because it was live comedy, but also I was doing some of it on Zoom because it was during the pandemic. So I would switch between on Zoom, open mics, and then doing it live. And it was pretty hard on Zoom, even trying to even tell one joke, you know, because there's no real audience feedback. But so that's why I decided to go with this background. And I try and, you know, do as much of world events or just comedy about saving the planet, because that's something I think is really important. We need to address more than ever the climate crisis. And so I work that in there too.
So this is fantastic. I love this part of you, and your father, and I'm sure your mother too, but your father had this uncanny, we were talking before we went live on the air, some of his movies are some of my personal favorites. I mean, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, and many others. But he had this extraordinary ability to understand the human condition, the craziness of it all, sometimes the pettiness of it all, the importance of it all, the love for it all, very, very, with that comedic underpinning, which has definitely been passed down to you, Kat. You've picked it right up. I would relate deeply to that because I have a similar sort of dry wit. It's the Irish side, my father's side, from New York as well, like your dad, Hell's Kitchen, right? My father from Astoria. And there's just something about, I guess, them coming from New York, the wit, the funniness, understanding sort of the craziness of life a little bit. And that has been passed down to you. So you share it in comedy. How do you I know it's hard, like you said, but are you enjoying doing stand-up comedy?
Yes. I mean, first of all, I wanted to try that because, as you know, I do one-person shows, solo shows, and I've got several of them I'm working on, revamping my Duet with Mick, which may evolve into my other show that I'm working on called She's a Rainbow, and then I have Crescent Drive. So I was writing these monologues during the pandemic to become one-person shows, and I decided I need, more stand-up influence in them because I want to combine stand-up with monologues, which then becomes a solo show. and just add more humor. And because I just felt that, like I said, we needed to get out and try and laugh off everything that was going on around us, because there was so much tragedy and so much fear during the pandemic. And so I'm getting ready to go back out there again with new material, but that was my main reason for launching Kat Kramer Comedy. It came out of just the desire of humor during the pandemic, and then adding that element in and trying every aspect of live comedy or live performing that I can just evolve in my art. But I don't necessarily consider myself a stand-up. I know other people do, but I'm so new at it that it's just, for me, it's just a learning experience and a way of cultivating that, humor into my solo performance.
Which is quite amazing. Obviously you grew up with all of this around you, and when you were a kid, were you watching what your parents were doing? Were you enamored by what they were doing when you would see them, talk about, or even see the sets that they've worked on, things of that nature? Was it something that captivated you as a child early on, that pointed you in the direction, in an inspirational way, to wanting to get into this line of work, the arts, entertainment, performance?
Well, according to my mother, who's also my producing partner and manager, as you mentioned, but I came out looking for my Klieg light, and I supposedly was always wanting to be performing on stage and in show business, more the song and dance part of things. And I didn't even really know who my father was, or what my mother was doing, or even my godmother at that point. I just wanted to be live in front of an audience. And I started as a classical ballet. And it was almost like she told me, as if I was reincarnated from a life where I was a professional ballerina, because I was demonstrating for the kids. I was like, in class at 3 or 4 years old, which is very, very young, doing pliés in the bar. And I think by the time I was 5 or 6, I was demonstrating, like co-teaching with the instructor. So I was kind of a prodigy in that sense. And then I went on point very early on toe shoes, which was, I don't remember the exact age, but that was a bit too early to actually be on point. So I really thought, and so did my parents, that I was going to go into the line of work of being a classical ballerina. But midway through it, before I was even 10 years old, I decided that wasn't for me. I wanted to do musical theater and, show dancing and modern dancing and singing and acting. So it all evolved out of dance. So I was always wanting to be, and was in show business, performing at an early age, before I really even knew the influence my father had, and my mom, and Katharine Hepburn, my godmother. I wasn't really aware, of their careers until I made the switch. So they influenced me, but I was already in show business before that happened. So it's a yes and no answer at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't you early on, did you used to do like plays in the yard with the neighborhood kid?
Yeah.
We did that too. We did it in the bedroom, we did it in the garage, we did it in the backyard. So you were already producing and creating and sort of developing your craft even in the yard.
Exactly right. I remember in grade school, before we moved to Seattle, because that's where my parents moved me and my sister Jennifer when we were like 10. I would think I was 10 years old, or maybe 9 when we moved up there. But I was directing, like Fiddler on the Roof and Oklahoma, these classical musicals, which I still love, the classics of musical theater, which is really my base, was musical theater after classical ballet. And I've known all the musicals. I'm just very well versed on, especially all the classic American musicals. That's always been the thing that has been my main interest growing up. So I was directing the kids in the in school during recess, and then I would just transfer that to the backyard of our home. And then up in Seattle, I just went straight to work as a professional actress and performer, as a child performer, because next to New York at that time, and especially I think it still continues to be, the Seattle theater scene and the music scene was very progressive, very innovative, and much more so than California, the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, and Oregon, very steeped in theater. So I became the main child actress in all the theater productions, and playing Helen Keller at a young age, and Anna Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank, and I did Estella in Great Expectations and Annie in the national tour. So I was never really a normal kid. They moved my sister and myself out of Beverly Hills because they didn't want us to have a Hollywood upbringing, but I went straight to work professionally. So my dad couldn't steer me away from show business, even if he tried.
Right.
I was already, and learning about my craft up there, which was the best place to do it, out of the limelight of Hollywood.
It's a beautiful area, the Pacific Northwest. I was just there in the springtime on a television shoot, and there's just something about that area that's very peaceful and aesthetically pleasing, and it's just a gorgeous spot to be. So that, I think that was an advantage, that you had an opportunity to grow up there, and it gives you a different perspective on life. And I know early on, there was somebody and there was a production that really tickled your fancy. And if I'm correct, it was Angela Lansbury, and it was Mame.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You really know your homework. She was my very first idol. Because I've had so many, as you know, that, and they've all influenced me in different ways, and it's their work so much that influences me. I'm not saying that they're not amazing people, but it was always about their work and their activism, you know, the ones that are activists. But yes, Dame Angela Lansbury was my first idol. And again, a story that my mom tells me is that my parents were in Europe and they saw her do Gypsy. She was doing a tour of Gypsy, I think, in England, definitely in Europe. And they went backstage to say, our daughter, Katharine, worships you. You're her idol. And she said, I've never had like a 4-year-old, I think I was 4 years old, a 4-year-old idolize me. So, yeah, I actually got to meet her many years later, but I guess in a way she really influenced me because has done all of it. And, you know, I had her honored at Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival. I'm on the advisory board, and she had just passed away. And I made sure she was recognized with the Infinity Award, which is a posthumous award. But before that, I had her honored when she was still around in 2016 at the LA Press Club. And I'm also on that advisory board, and she got the Legend Award that year. So it was really absolutely amazing to be able to, you know, give her 2 awards, one living and one posthumous, within just a few short years. And I still miss her and what she contributed to the arts.
Oh, absolutely. And then what a run she had on CBS with Murder, She Wrote.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. She was so perfectly cast for that role, wasn't she?
Oh, yes. She even signed the Murder, She Wrote box set that I had, and I gave it away for silent auction as an item, because I'm very big on silent auctions and donating a lot of things. But you mentioned Mame. Yeah, Jerry Herman, his musicals have always been favorites of mine, and especially Mame because of Angela Lansbury. And also Lucille Ball, you know, has been a role model of mine in the film. But I was so lucky to be able to meet the late Jerry Herman when I first did one of my first one-person shows, which was more of a cabaret act, nightclub act in when I moved back to LA. And I did a Jerry Herman medley for him, and he was in the audience. And of course, it ended with Hello Jerry, which was a parody of Hello Dolly. But there was a couple songs from Mame that I included. So yes, that's really goes back to my roots of all the musicals that I was very young to be into, but I never changed. And, I love all of them now as well. But anything by Jerry Herman, I've done songs from Mac and Mabel in my first one-person show when I moved back here. And so he's kind of worked his way into a lot of the work I've done when it's a live musical show.
It's really amazing too. When you did get a chance to realize, who the folks were you at all enamored by some of the people that they dealt with, that they worked with, especially your father with some of these iconic actors and actresses and other producers and directors, and just, coming in like we've had Lucy Arnaz, who's a dear friend. She's been on several times, and you would always hear the stories of, you mentioned phenomenal Lucille Ball. Jack Benny was next door, and this one would come over, and Dinah Shore would stop by for lunch or whatever. Did you have any of that when you were even in Seattle? Was there any of that exposure, or you just have a totally separate life and then developed it as you went along?
No, it's interesting because obviously, before we moved to Washington State, Katharine Hepburn, my godmother and namesake, would come over to visit us in Beverly Hills. So that was my first memory of meeting her when I don't even know, I might have been 3 years old. And the story goes, again, I vaguely remember this, but my parents were watching. So they said that she came on the door and knocked on it. And I opened the door and said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Kate." And I said, "Me too." And the door in her face. And I was very mischievous. I used to tie her up with a rope, and she was very athletic because she had no kids. So I was the closest thing to that. And so and I probably met all the comics from Mad World, when the ones that used to come over and visit my father. But when I moved up to Seattle, that's where I really got to know a lot more people, like Liza Minnelli, who was an early mentor of mine when she did her show up there. She had a one-person show playing the Fifth Avenue Theater. And I think I must have been like, I don't even know if I was quite 10, but it was before I moved to New York, actually. I moved to New York because she encouraged me to study with the late Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen. And this was towards the end of their main teaching. I got to work with both of them. That influenced me. But I used to sing her mother's songs. I used to sing Judy Garland songs. And I do remember going to see her show, and then my parents went out of town on a trip, and I was in school. I was supposed to go to school the next day, but instead I went to see Liza's show, and I had with me a tape recorder, and I tapped her on the shoulder after, like, I was in her dressing room because I'd met her backstage with my parents. This time I was with the I guess you could say babysitter or nanny that my parents had hired while they were out of town. And I said, "Can I sing for you?" And so I had absolutely no nerves whatsoever. I was just very excited to be able to share with her mother's songs, not knowing that that was probably something that nobody did. But she did. She got the whole, all of her backup singers and dancers and the orchestra. And I sang like, "You Made Me Love You" and "Rock About Your Baby" and "Swanee" and all of her mom's concert songs. And then she performed them for me too, kind of demonstrating tips. And then she said, "You've got to meet and see Charles Aznavour," who's since passed away, but he was a mentor of hers. So I talked my parents into, well, she called them and asked permission because I was, underage. Can she fly to, and it was to come back to LA to see Charles Aznavour perform. So she took me to see him perform and was really trying to get me into his music and him as an influence. So that relationship was formed with Liza Minnelli as a mentor when I was up in Seattle. And then I ended up moving to New York to study with Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen, and stayed there for a while and was living in Gramercy Park, training in New York. And then Shirley MacLaine, who's always been a role model of mine, moved up to Washington State in Graham, Washington. She was living there for a short time. she had a place there for many years, but I got to know her and form a friendship with her, talking on the phone about her book Out on a Limb, which changed my life when I read it. And so I finally met her when I moved back to LA. But that's an example of role models of mine that I actually got to know better living outside of Hollywood than if I'd lived here. So that's an interesting experience.
Absolutely is. And I think it's a rich, deep, full circle experience for you as well. It enhances your understanding of life and living and of humanity. And as I mentioned, as your iconic father, certainly captured the essence of humanity through his extraordinary career. Again, sometimes you forget when you look back at the roll call of all the different things he's had his hands on, that he's created and conceptualized. Absolutely extraordinary. And again, some of them, I mean, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, of course, was really, it's one of my personal favorites, and it's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, and Judgment at Nuremberg, and all these iconic movies that he, again, is responsible for. Do you have a personal favorite or two? I mean, it's got to really be difficult when there's so many spectacular films that your father was responsible for, with all of these extraordinary actors and actresses and crew and everybody that put these masterpieces together.
Well, the ones you just mentioned are dear to my heart. Obviously, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, as
every
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. It's a mad, 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 mad world.
Every time I watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Kat, I crave Oregon boysenberry ice cream.
It's amazing, and that's a movie you never get. I never get tired of.
No.
It's on them, it seems like every week, or they do run, and I'm grateful for this, a lot of Stanley Kramer and Katharine Hepburn films, but mostly Stanley Kramer on a regular basis. And so I watch them when they're on. I mean, the Cane Mutiny, which he produced, was just on recently. And, when they had the Marlon Brando centennial, because he discovered Marlon and put him in The Men. That was his film debut, because he saw him in a rehearsal of The Eagle Has Two Heads with Tallulah Bankhead. And he was doing Streetcar on Broadway, but he made the decision to have The Men be his film debut. So a lot of people don't know that was Marlon's debut. And then he did The Wild One with my father, which, everybody knows the look of him on the motorcycle with the leather jacket. And I mean, I've even copied that look on the cover of a magazine that I did recently. That did define Marlon Brando's image.
I think you did, Kat.
Yeah. So those movies, there it is.
We move quick here.
There
it is. This is recent, right?
Well,
Cat Kramer, Making a Difference. Hollywood Weekly. Yeah.
And he was in Aries, born the day before me. So I really tap into that rebel energy of Marlon's. But Bless the Beasts and Children has been a big influence on me because of obviously the animal rights aspect of it. It was about gun control, but it was also the first animal rights movie. And it's become a cult classic. And I reimagined the theme song from that.
Yes.
Beasts and Children, originally sung by the Carpenters.
Right.
Written by Barry Dvorzan. And
one of the greats. I have that album that actually, from when it came out, with that version on it. It's a beautiful song.
And Perry Botkin Jr. Yeah.
Another.
I did reimagine that. I'd sung it actually on television. I think it was a morning show when I was opening my one-person show. I had that song in my first show, tribute to my father. I think it was the second show I did. Yeah, the second show had a Stanley Kramer medley of his classic. It has so many great songs in his films. And I'm actually thinking of recording some of them, but that's for another conversation. I reimagined Bless the Beast and Children because Lily Tomlin, who's my performing idol, and I'm blessed to say she's the ambassador for Cat Kramer's films that changed the world. And we were both we advocate for elephants and wildlife, and she's also an activist. But it was the theme song that I was using on the video that we did, the PSA for Elephants and Man. I used the original Carpenter's version, and she was saying, you should reimagine that song for a new generation of animal rights activists and as a universal theme. And I had this idea to have a children's choir behind me, which she loved. And so I teamed up with Le Petit Cirque, which is a children's animal-free circus. They sang, the chorus part, and then I got to perform it live with them at the Avalon Hollywood for Circus Paws, which was a charity for Paws, which is a sanctuary in Northern California. And so Lily was there in the audience, and she's been such an influence on me as a performer and also as an activist. An activist is really something I didn't coin it, but it's just something.
I like that, activist. That is really cool. And you have a wonderful friendship. There you are with your lovely mom as well.
Yes,
and
yes.
Your mom is, I mentioned this in the introduction, and there, of course, your mom on the left and the comparable Lily Tomlin. Every time I pick up a phone and I want to make a call, I always think of Lily Tomlin answering the phone as the phone operator. You have such a wonderful relationship with your mom, and your mom watches over you, and she sort of guides, and she's your, manager, and you guys work on productions together. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, especially, in this very crazy industry where, sometimes that doesn't happen. People drift into different areas of life, but you guys are, through it all, thick and thin. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that we're producing partners. But she also is the producing partner on Cat Kramer's films that changed the world, because those are basically live events that we produce, and film and streaming projects. And she also has produced on her own a remake of High Noon, my father's classic Western, for TBS. She did the TV version of that. She's also been a casting director. She actually cast most of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, but she didn't want credit on that for some reason, because she had just married my father and she didn't want to be asking for credit. I think now, we're in a different time than they were then, so it would have been automatic. But she also, produced with him and learned the ropes from the production side, because she'd had such a great acting career, but she gave that up when she married him to, raise my sister and myself. She also raised his kids from his previous marriage. So, and she never set out to be a parent either. It's just something that happened. But she really has production experience, and so we're trying to produce. And the industry is harder than ever right now, especially since the strikes. But we're really, focused on my events, She Rose for Change, and also film and streaming projects, and she's also doing live theater projects. So I'm involved with all of them, but she also has a couple of things she's doing with other partners. Yeah. So, we try to, she and I are producing partners on everything I do, but some of the projects I have, partnerships. And so she just checks in on that, and it's really a team effort. But we are, a production company, a corporation, and she's also my manager officially, which is hard because it's, we have to separate the mother-daughter in both ways and just be partners, or, I have to listen to her, and she's very objective about it.
Is that her calling now?
I don't think so.
You're home. Get home. You're late for supper.
I was watching and she was calling.
Yeah, she's been the manager ever since you were born. That's
yes,
mom, right?
right, because she has an eye and she knows the industry and she has good taste, and she lets
Yeah,
me choose my own projects, though. She doesn't
which is
interfere,
good.
but I do run things by her. And in terms of Kat Kramer's films that changed the world, she's always been my co-producing partner on that, but more in the background. But I have to say that it all ends up, if it fails, it's my fault. If it succeeds, it's my efforts. I mean, I make all the decisions on it. She's more involved with the business side and the logistics of it and just the planning. But I had free reign in the decisions of the films and the panel, and so we do
And
work together on that. Yeah.
and you have over time really paid heed to and celebrated. We showed a little graphic there, some absolutely extraordinary films, and of course that continues. Yentl and The Cove and
Yes.
Elephants and Man and The Decent One and The Hunting Ground and Teach Your Children Well. Each of these are absolutely extraordinary. And folks, if you've never seen them, you should. They all have poignant messages and they're beautifully done. How do you go about? Well, first, tell us Kat Kramer's films that changed the world. Before we talk about how you select the movies, tell us what inspired you to actually create this, because I think it's a very special thing.
Thank you. Well, I feel that my father orchestrated it from above and has been helping me with it, because I wanted to program not necessarily his films, but movies or documentaries, because I think they're very authentic. Not that narrative films aren't, but I primarily present documentaries because that's where you get the true issue. But I wanted to showcase films from filmmakers that were, in a sense, following in his footsteps by addressing social issues that we don't want to look at, or taboo subjects or controversial subjects that we need to experience and have a call to action. And documentaries really are the leading content, as you would say, of these issues. So it started kind of, I wouldn't say mysteriously, but we had the Stanley Kramer screening room at Sunset Gower Studios, which was formerly Columbia, where he made Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and a lot of his films towards the end. His first films were at UA, and then the rest were at Columbia. Those were his two main studios. And Glynn Turman, the amazing actor, was nominated for an Emmy for a performance that he did, a guest appearance on In Treatment. And so he asked us to, campaign, because I personally get behind films and performances and have been doing that just out of the love of these great artists and their work. So I said, I'd like to try the Stanley Kramer screening room. It's called the Stanley Kramer Theater, but it's really a screening room. And so my mom and I hosted his episodes, and we invited a lot of people and people from the industry, and he ended up winning the Emmy. And it was just so amazing. He beat out a lot of competition, but he's an amazing actor. He was just selected for a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for the class of 2025. But how I bring this to date is that's when I decided, let's use the Stanley Kramer screening room for a cinema series where I can show one film at a time. So I just started with Yentl. I wanted to try it out just to see if I can round up a bunch of people and motivate a call to action. And I decided Yentl because it was women's equality, women's empowerment. And also my father and I used to watch that. And it was a movie that was so important to me, but it really said a lot about women's equality and female empowerment and diversity and inclusion, all in 2009. I mean, kind of ahead of its time. And I didn't want to just showcase the fact that Barbara, who's another idol of mine, was the first woman to write, produce, direct, star in, and do the music and wear all those hats on her directorial debut. I mean, I didn't want to just make it about a film issue, because it already was that. I wanted to, showcase how women in different countries in different areas of the world are raped and murdered because they're women. So it was saying basically that we haven't even come that far since Yentl's story, which was in the 1900s. But to show that and that it wasn't just in film that we need empowerment, because, let's face it, Barbara had such a fight being the first woman to do that. And there's been several women behind the camera, and I'm a member of Women in Film. So we already knew that the more steps we take forward, the more we go backwards, that there needed to be more representation and women behind the camera. I decided to take it a step further and include women from the Congo and the Enough Project, which was nonprofits that exposed the fact that these women were being raped and murdered because they were women. So while Yentl had to disguise herself as a male just to be able to study the Torah, these women had to hide just because, they couldn't even disguise themselves. They had to hide or they'd be killed. So I had a women's only tea party, like right after Women's History Month at Sunset Gower. And it was amazing how it took off. I mean, women flew in from the Congo. We had keynote speakers. It was just, I had, activists representing the nonprofits. And that's when I decided that this was more than just a female empowerment one-time event. I need to program movies as a cinema series, and they don't have to just be about one issue. I want to, explore different issues. So the next film I selected was The Cove. It kind of selected me because after I did Yentl, I saw that there was a need for this. So people in the industry started just suggesting films. And, at that time, The Cove was very controversial. It was winning a lot of guild ceremonies. It was winning Best Documentary Feature, like at the Writers Guild and the IDA, or just different awards. But it was nominated for an Oscar. But my point being, it was not a shoo-in that it was going to win the Oscar, because it's a controversial film. And most of the Academy voters that I spoke to at the time were afraid to watch the dolphin slaughter. There's a section in the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but that's very graphic and shows the dolphins actually being slaughtered. And in a way, it was like Bless the Beasts and Children. It had that theme to it about animal cruelty. So I decided to get a 5-year-old activist to talk to the audience, and I'd invited a lot of Academy members. It was right before the votes were due. So I not only had activists there, but Academy voters and in the documentary branch, just to make sure that they would see this film before the decisions were made. So it was kind of my way of campaigning without being on the money about it. And the 5-year-old activist said, if I can watch this movie, and I'm only 5 years old, and I cry for the dolphins, but I've watched it several times, then what's wrong with you adults, So yeah, it had a call to action. It made so much impact, and they all voted for it, and it did win the Academy Award. We also had a sting operation. When I say we, I mean the filmmakers who flew in for it, because it was a few days before the votes were in, but it was very close to the Academy Awards. I think it was like whenever the votes were in, the Oscars was coming up maybe a week later. They decided to come. When they left my event, they came and they spoke, and we had city council there, and they declared it the Cove Day. We had, city officials and activists. I had like 600 people on a soundstage at Sunset Bronson, which is across from Sunset Gower. They decided to leave right after the Q&A and go to the Hump Restaurant in Santa Monica and perform a sting operation because they found out they were serving whale meat, which was illegal. So again, it was like my screening series was more than just a premiere or a film or a screening. It created a call to action, not just with the audience, but the filmmakers were able to have the Hump Restaurant shut down because they were serving whale meat. And then we started protesting in front of them, and they did accomplish their goal, and that was even before all the marches now. But you showed all these amazing posters, and I've had a lot of other films since then, because I've just had my 12th installment. I just finished it last month.
What was it?
It's called Celebrating Laughter, The Life and Films of Colin Higgins. And he
Oh,
was
yes. And you did a whole thing with that, right?
He directed and co-wrote 9 to 5. He wrote Harold and Maude. And he directed Silver Streak.
Right there on the screen.
No,
Yeah.
actually, no, that was Arthur Hiller.
Oh, that's, yeah.
He wrote Silver Streak. He directed and wrote Foul Play.
Wow.
He co-produced and co-wrote Out on a Limb with Shirley MacLaine, based on the book, that meant so much in my life, that had changed my life when I read it as just a kid. And, he died of AIDS. He was the first mainstream filmmaker to die of AIDS in 1988, but he established the Colin Higgins Foundation right before he passed away, which is still happening now. In fact, they give away grants. Millions of dollars have been given out in grants and scholarship to LGBTQ plus filmmakers and student filmmakers. And just this week, they're giving out grants at the Frameline Film Festival. So this movie is going up for awards consideration. It's already won a lot of awards on the festival circuit. And before that, I had The New Abolitionists, which is Christina Zorch's documentary about, and these are all documentaries, I have to say, that I'm mentioning. I've only had 2 narrative films, Yentl, obviously, which was an older film. I had the 25th anniversary. Since then, I've only presented new films, new documentaries, and I had one film that was a DVD release called Bhopal, A Prayer for Rain, starring Martin Sheen, and that was for the 7th installment. And so that was the 7th, and then I had Grandma, Lily Tomlin's Grandma, written and directed by Paul Weitz. But, I advocate for the deaf community and the disabilities community. So I decided to take a film that didn't have any deaf characters in it, but because Lily used sign language, American Sign Language, in her very first film, Nashville, Robert Altman's Nashville, and she played the mother of 2 deaf children, and then she used sign language on Sesame Street, the deaf audiences that were seeing Grandma related to her as a hearing advocate of the deaf community. She was really one of the first ones that used American Sign Language in a mainstream film, and she wasn't deaf. But having played Helen Keller, I've always advocated for the deaf, blind, and anybody with disabilities. And I decided to have an open caption screening. First time they'd ever had that on a studio lot in 20 years. And we did it at Sony Studios because it was a Sony Pictures Classic film. And this is Grandma I'm talking about. I invited, it was 50% deaf and 50% hearing. So it was an inclusive audience, and they experienced the open caption way of seeing a film, because deaf talent in the entertainment industry at that time was completely shut out of all the screenings and Q&As and all the for your consideration. They had to wait till a DVD or a screener came to them that had captions that they could see. They couldn't experience it in a theater with their peers. So I wanted to make sure they had that experience. And I had ASL interpreters for the Q&A. We must have had 10 interpreters, student interpreters and leading interpreters, because it was, an experience of a filmmakers panel. And I had Troy Kotsur on that panel, even though he had nothing to do with Grandma, because he's always been an amazing actor. He was a leading actor with Deaf West, and he's a director and a filmmaker as well. So I had Paul Weitz, the filmmaker of Grandma, and Troy Kotsur on the panel, with Delbert Wetter, who's also a deaf creative. And it's amazing that I was able to accomplish that. And I try to bring in accessibility with every screening I do. I've had them interpreted ever since then. I'm incorporating in for the visually impaired as well. And we had ASL interpreters at Celebrating Laughter because I had deaf screenwriters in the audience. And, you know, back east, you probably know that it's kind of the norm to make screenings accessible or events. But out here in Hollywood and California, they really are not quite where they need to be. Even after Coda, which Troy Kotsur won the Academy Award for, and the movie won Best Picture, you know, and I was aware of Troy's work way before that, and him being on the panel for that, I kind of knew then he was going to be the male Marley Matlin. I just had a sense about it. But that's another example of how I've been influenced by my father, because he had cast real people with disabilities in The Men. He had real paraplegics play with Marlon Brando, who was playing a paraplegic. He used real Down syndrome and retarded children in A Child Is Waiting. And he had a little person in Ship of Fools. So he's always been an advocate of authentic casting, and I always have been too. And so I've carried that on since that was the 8th installment. And then I had Love and Bananas, an Elephant Story, which was another amazing documentary by the actress Ashley Bell about an elephant rescue. And that's really when Sheroes for Change started, because she's a female filmmaker and the subject of the movie was female and the elephant was female. So that kind of made me motivated to start Sheroes for Change Festival, which is going to be launching. I've done different screenings where it's been under the guise of Sheroes for Change, but I haven't launched the festival yet. So that will be happening this year.
You are, like I said, you are a busy beaver.
You have your all in.
You mentioned Colin Higgins. So would that be this here?
Yes. Yeah, that's the Hirschfield drawing of Colin with all of his characters. And, you know, the filmmaker of that movie, the director and editor and producer, is Nicholas Eliopoulos. And what's interesting about Nicholas, because he worked with Colin, he also did all the animation sequences in 9 to 5. But Nicholas worked with my father. He was involved with The Runner Stumbles, my father's final film, and his relatives were all in the industry. I'm talking about Nicholas, and they worked on It's a Mad, 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 Mad World and Ship of Fools and a lot of my father's films. So it was like, and Nicholas made the Mary Pickford film that was so well received called Mary Pickford Muse of the Movies that Michael York narrates. And it's a film from 2008, but it's being kind of revisited and it's going to be redistributed in Europe. And so I'm going to be presenting that as part of the lineup of Sheroes for Change. So Nicholas is an amazing editor and director. He's made that documentary. He's made several others, but I think the Mary Pickford doc and this one about Colin Higgins are his most well-known films. And then the writer of Celebrating Laughter and producer is Jim Rogers, who's the president of the Colin Higgins Foundation. So we had an amazing event.
Colin Higgins there on the screen, yeah.
And this movie's going up for awards consideration. So yeah, I had the 12th installment. I just finished it May 25th. And now I'm focusing on Sheroes for Change and also the Palm Springs International Comedy Festival. My mother and I are both founding board members, and we have the Stanley Kramer Mad World Comedy Award there for directing. That's going to be announced soon. And then the Atomic Age Cinema Fest Hollywood 2024 will be the second time I've co-partnered with the Uranium Film Festival to present the Atomic Age Cinema Fest, which is later this year, and it's all movies about nuclear issues. And On the Beach is going to be presented, a look back at it as part of the lineup. So I've got my year cut out for me the rest of the year, and it's all festival. I mean, they're really festival cinema series, whatever you call it.
One of your father's epic, iconic movies in the repertoire with Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire, Anthony Perkins, and it was about nuclear war. And how ironic, that you're doing something that is also talked about these days too.
Well, it's interesting because for the 5th anniversary of Kat Kramer's films that changed the world, I presented Fallout, which is an Australian documentary about how my father took Neville Shute's novel On the Beach and adapted it for the screen. And it's all about kind of the battles they had on how it should be transferred or adapted to the screen, and all about my father making it in Melbourne, Australia. And my mom is in that documentary, and also Dr. Helen Keller, who On the Beach changed her life and made her into the person she is today in the nuclear war. That's what she does, is lectures about the dangers of it. And she's written several books, and a film about her won an Academy Award. And she's a doctor. She's the most amazing person. And so she flew in to be the keynote speaker. And Lily Tomlin had known her for many years and had even received a Helen Keller Award, back in the 90s. So she came and introduced her. And so that's, why I need to update my sizzle reel. I have an amazing sizzle reel for Kat Kramer's films that changed the world, but it only goes up to Fallout, and it doesn't include all the other films.
What is the work that you're doing celebrating? I think it's beautiful. I think it's part of some of this, celebrating Marsha Hunt.
I'm glad you brought that up. I established an award called the Hunt for Humanity Award while Marsha was still alive. And she not only worked with my father, she did a film for him, and she was also blacklisted. She was one of the Hollywood 10, but that's not why I established the award. It's because Marsha was really the first activist in our industry. If arguably she was the first female activist. She really put herself on the line to fight for causes she believed in, and dedicated her life to being a humanitarian with the United Nations and, feed the hungry. And she was really the first one to do that. So I established an award called the Hunt for Humanity Award, which I only gave out once to her at the 7th installment, which was Bhopal, A Prayer for Rain. Now, there has been a film, an amazing movie, an award-winning film by Roger C. Memos about Marsha called Marsha Hunt Sweet Adversity. And I do plan to screen that during Sheroes for Change and give the Hunt for Humanity Award to the second recipient. Sadly, Marsha passed away during the pandemic, but she was 104 years old. But I really wanted her to give out the award because I could never find a really worthy recipient. There's a lot of them, but the timing didn't work out. So I ended up having to make the decision to move the award to Sheroes for Change. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to be given out. And then there'll be a Shero Award too. And that festival will be interesting because I'm going to start it very small, but I hope it's going to grow into something that's annual, and I'm going to include music as well. But it really celebrates diversity, equity, and inclusion, women's empowerment, women's equality, intergenerational stories about women making a difference. And some are very famous women. Some will be ones that have made a difference but are not necessarily well known, and the documentaries about them introduce them to the public. So that's the goal for that.
As much as you are a spectacular talent and performer, you are a humanitarian. You love to give back. You inspire people. You lift them up. You sing with your heart and soul with everything you do, which I think is such a beautiful thing that you do, Kat. It really is, and it touches all of us. It's long lasting. It's impactful, and it also motivates us to then roll up our sleeves and take part and celebrate and lift one another up. Like you, I'm a Libra, so I'm balance and harmony, but I have Virgo rising. Your mother's a Virgo?
My mother's a Virgo. My father was a Libra, and his birthday was September 29th. Hers is September 20th.
And I'm the 24th. I'm right in between.
Oh my goodness.
I'm your long lost cousin.
Yes, you are.
from New York.
Lily is September 1st, and she was born on my parents' wedding anniversary. That was their wedding anniversary date. So that's another reason I'm so bonded to her, is just for that date alone. But excuse me, we're going to have the Palm Springs International Comedy Festival will be the 27th, 28th, and 29th in Palm Springs in Cathedral City at Mary Pickford. Pickford is the Place Theater. And there is going to be, I don't know if it has been announced yet, but there's probably going to be a screening of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World on September 29th on my father's birthday, which is a perfect time to be doing it. Oh, and so much of it was filmed in Palm Springs, you know.
Oh,
it was filmed there.
To celebrate him on his birthday, your father, Stanley Kramer, is going to be absolutely extraordinary. You know, as much as we talk about these iconic films, these masterpieces that your father has been, you know, of course, Judgment at Nuremberg and just the list. I encourage folks, just go to the Stanley Kramer catalog and watch all of them. The breadth and scope is extraordinary, from comedy to drama to so much more. But you too, as you know, a talent, as an actress and a singer and comedian and all the other, you've been in movies, you've done television as well. I mean, and a great variety too. Do you enjoy the actress part of you? Do you like performing in movies and on television? And look at these great little Fockers, Fate Shadow. Fate Shadow, you were in with your mother too, right?
Yes, yeah. Yes. We acted in that, playing mother-daughter, and that was kind of interesting because we'd never done that. We were in both Fate Shadow and Fate Shadow the Whole Story. Fate Shadow is a short, and Fate Shadow the Whole Story is a feature, and we played mother-daughter in that. But yeah, and Turnover, right there in Mother's Day Memories, is a short. Turnover is a feature, and I'm very proud of that because it is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have Down syndrome talent in that, and also deaf talent. And I was lucky to be brought in by Linda Palmer to play Fran, and also be a co-producer on it. Linda Palmer is the writer-director. It was an all-female crew, so I advocate for women behind the camera, as you know. And I won for Best Supporting Actress at the Love International Film Festival. But I'm so proud of it because, you know, we had deaf talent. We made the decision to change one of the characters that was a hearing character and turn her into a deaf character. And, you know, there was talk about, do we use a hearing actress to play deaf? And I said no. And this is even before, you know, all the advocacy that's really strong now. You have to have authentic casting. I'm a huge advocate of that. And I said, no, it has to be a deaf actress. You can't have a hearing actress. That went out decades ago. It has to be authentic. There's too much talent that can do the role. And so I was lucky to be brought in on the auditions and help select Raquel McPeak, who's an amazing actress who played the part. And, you know, that's another film that Linda made, Turnover, that was way ahead of its time, to include authentic casting and have characters that were written as that too. So, and then to use our background actors were all from the Down syndrome community and also deaf community. So that film is really ahead of its time, and it was a little engine that could film and very much embraced by the public.
I mentioned, of course, film and television as well. You've made appearances on lots of different series and shows and specials over the years, which I think is fantastic. Even Larry King Live, who we, you know, as a broadcast television radio guy myself, I absolutely miss him at 9 o'clock when he was on CNN. And whenever there was somebody that was major that passed or a story that was something that we wanted to celebrate, you would turn him on and he'd have all of the folks who knew Jackie Gleason or whoever it was talking about and celebrating the person's life. And I do miss that style of, hopefully we're doing a little of that with the Jim Masters show here, paying homage to that style. But you've had an opportunity to be on several different shows, of course, Child of the 70s, and Actors Entertainment. And then this, which I know is near and dear to your heart on Netflix, Call Me Kate.
You know, that just came out last year on her birthday. And I was so happy to share stories about Auntie Kat.
Yes, she
and there
really
was a lot of stories that
is.
they used, you know, but it was a great portrait of her. And I was also asked to do some of the narration. I didn't do her, which I could have done, but they got a real sound-alike, look-alike back east that portrayed her in some of the reenactments. But I was able to narrate, do voiceover, as well as be an interview subject. And I have to tell you how many people really love the documentary and they think it's a fresh approach. And Lorna Tucker, the filmmaker, wanted to do something different to show the human side of Katharine Hepburn. I think she really accomplished it. And Child of the 70s, I'm glad you brought that up. I was lucky to be able to be in 3 seasons of that and create characters inspired by Lily Tomlin, because she also played male characters besides female characters that she created. But I played Frances Rye, who morphs into these other characters. And that was
incredible.
A great experience. And that Michael Vaccaro, the creator, allowed me to have the freedom to create the characters.
And your scope and range is extraordinary. Mentioning Turnover and Mother's Day Memories, I want to let folks know that, again, you did win Best Supporting Actress at the 2019 Love International Film Festival for the role of Fran in Turnover, that award-winning indie film streaming on Amazon Prime and Tubi and others. Also starring as Michelle in that beautiful award-winning dramatic short film, Mother's Day Memories, playing Beverly in the award-winning indie feature, Fate's Shadow, which we mentioned, the whole story, and the award-winning short film version, Fate's Shadow. Also, next being seen in, well, of course, we showed that on the screen too, as Violet Grace in Rings of the Unpromised, which I think is fantastic. And you won fabulous international awards for the role of Violet Grace Pennington, and a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Luxury Oscar Gala presented by Samira's Network. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. That just happened in March on Oscar night. And, it was so amazing because they gave out a lot of awards to independent filmmakers. And, it was really Samira's an amazing event producer, and she put the whole thing together. And they asked me, would I accept the Lifetime Achievement Award? She asked me, actually. And I said, I'm too young. I haven't accomplished anything yet that I plan to. But, I thought it was a good opportunity to be recognized for activism or being an activist. So that's why I accepted. And Martina Webster, who also was a producer on the event, is amazing. And she was one of the producers on Turnover. And she has the Sholo Film Festival in Arizona. And she asked me to be an honorary board member. So all that just happened in March.
Congratulations.
And all the projects I've done, they've all, like Mother's Day Memories, again, is a social issue or a cause film. And it's won several awards. It's about Alzheimer's, and I play the wife of the character John, whose mother has Alzheimer's, and it's actually based on Bill Hoverston, who was the star, and he also created the story because it was based on his relationship with his mother, who had Alzheimer's. And Matthew Michael Ross is an amazing filmmaker, so he wrote the script, co-wrote it with Bill, and also directed it, and that won a lot of awards, including an Idlewild. A lot of awards around the country,
It's really extraordinary, the response when people are connected to something like that. And then there's little Fockers who are a part of that hilarity too. What was it like? What was it like being a part of that?
I have to tell you, because I love the Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, and the little Fockers, and Robert De Niro's an idol of mine, and Barbara and Dustin, those are all idols. And and Ben Stiller, of course, what he does and his creativity. So I was just lucky to be included and be in scenes with them, with De Niro and Ben Stiller. But I wish they would do like a fourth one.
Yeah.
And then I would have like a huge role. That would be my goal.
Yeah,
or something more to the plot. But I was just happy, Paul Weitz directed that.
Yeah.
And he did Grandma with Lily, and also Moving On with Lily and Jane Fonda. The interesting thing is Paul Weitz's grandfather was my father's agent. So there was, and that, I wouldn't say that nepotism played too much of a role, but I had that family connection with him. And also, my father got the very first completed star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. A lot of people don't know that, but he was the first completed star in March of 1960. So because of that, I've always been passionate about the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and making sure that, that I attend ceremonies to support, especially those that I admire that worked with him. And then I've nominated a few. And recently I was successful in being part of Team Juanita Moore, who nominated Juanita Moore for a posthumous star. She's the class of 2022, but the ceremony will be happening later this year because you only have 2 years once you're selected. But Paul Weitz's mother, Susan Kohner, played opposite her in Imitation of Life, and they were both nominated for Best Supporting Actress. So there's that whole connection there with Imitation of Life and Paul Weitz and his family. And she, was a pioneer because she was an African-American that was in many movies. And she worked with my father. She did 2 films with my father. And she worked with Lily Tomlin. I mean, she was in, her final film was The Kid, Bruce Willis and Lily Tomlin. So it's kind of coming around full circle. And we're very happy that Juanita got selected because they only give out a couple of posthumous stars a year. Sometimes they only give out 1. And she was included. And there's so many, we're trying to get Colin Higgins a posthumous star, and he wasn't selected for the class of 2025, which, we're very disappointed about, but we're just going to keep submitting him till he's recognized. But to get Juanita Moore that star, it's going to be, a special ceremony because she really was an actress working at a time when there was no representation, so to speak of, and half the time she wasn't even credited in a lot of the films that she was in. So it's started me thinking about how can I make a difference more with diversity. And so we started Forget Me Not. I started that with her nephew Arnett Moore and his daughter Tamita and the family. How can I, make sure that pioneers in the African-American community or in the BIPOC community are recognized? So we're hopefully doing a project about Juanita Moore. I can't say too much because it's still in the early stages, but I want to make sure Bea Richards gets a posthumous star, who was part of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. So that's, something that's near and
beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So are the Rolling Stones, as you are a Rolling Stones aficionado.
I'm a huge fan, and I almost wore a Stone shirt, but I thought,
yeah, I was going to say.
I'm getting
that top that you have, that jacket is really nice. It's very, very colorful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try and wear the Stones logo as much as possible, especially when
you did record an album of Mick Jagger cover songs and even obscure Rolling Stone tunes, and that's titled Gemstone. And you're actually singing, as I mentioned, sort of in the introduction, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, which I think is fantastic. And congratulations on that, because the singing part is something that people who know you from television and film and elsewhere might not know that as much, but that was a labor of love, huh?
It is, yeah, and it was originally called Glimmer Twins. The Glimmer Twins. It was because that's the name of Mick and Keith when they produce and write together as the Stones. And that's Waddy Wachtel, the amazing guitarist who worked with the Stones. And what I did was I couldn't call it Glimmer Twins because that's licensed to them, so I just created Gemstone. The name Gemstone or Gemstones, gems from a stone. I basically took Mick Jagger's specific songs from his solo albums because I've always felt that he was underappreciated as a songwriter on his own because he's, such a dynamic force as a showman.
Mm-hmm.
And the Rolling Stones, both him and Keith are, known as the Rolling Stones, and that's their main creative force. But both of them are songwriters on their own and have collaborated with other artists, especially Mick. And I've always felt his sex symbol persona and his theatrical persona and his offstage life kind of got in the way of him being taken seriously as a great songwriter when he's writing his own compositions. So I wanted to, take gems from his solo albums and obscure Rolling Stones songs that I think maybe were more, there's some songs that he writes with Keith. It's more of a Keith song or a Mick song. It doesn't matter. It's still the soul of both of them. But I wanted to sing them from a female point of view, focusing on more the love songs that he's written. And then I did cover Keith Richards' Make No Mistake from Talk Is Cheap, his solo album, because, it's a great duet. I originally sang it as a solo piece, but it is written as a duet. So I had Terry Reid, who's an amazing singer, who'd also opened for the Stones at one point, do a duet with me on it. And the whole point of the album was to make sure that all the musicians and the producers had worked with the Stones in some capacity. So I really didn't include anybody that hadn't authentically worked with the Stones. That was what I set up when I decided to do it and to take a chance and record these songs and cover them. And that was the through line. So a lot of wonderful musicians really wanted to work on the album. And unless they worked with Mick and Keith, either with the Stones or on their solo projects, they weren't included. So I really kept that, tried to keep that as authentic as possible. There might have been one that I worked with that didn't work with the Stones, but I won't go there because I'm trying to keep it. And I was lucky to have Jimmy Ripp, who was Mick's musical director on all of his solo tours and, and also on the solo albums. He was a musician on it. He's not in any of these pictures, though. These were when I worked with Bernard Fowler, who is still the Stones' backup singer and had worked on all their side projects. And you'll see from the pictures, he also sang with me on Hang On To Me Tonight. So I'm actually there's still some songs I'm adding to the album, but basically it's ready. It's been played overseas. It's been played on the radio here. I wouldn't say it's a bootleg, but in a sense, it's never officially been released the way I wanted to. It's still evolving, and so is the show. But, the Stones are on tour right now with their Hackney Diamonds 2024.
That's right. And you said the show, too, because you have a show that you do. Tell us about that.
Well, I will tell you, I always like to keep it kind of a secret till people see it, but I had this idea to take my dream. I want to sing a duet or have Mick Jagger play on one of the tracks.
Doesn't it look like in this photo you're saying that? I'm dreaming right now of having them play on one of my tracks.
That's kind of the line in there. And Auntie Kate isn't my alter ego in there. And that's where the song Catherine with an A, which was Shelley Goldstein, who collaborated with me on the show, but she wrote the Dear Lily Tomlin salute, which is so near and dear to my heart that I performed when Lily got the Pioneer Award. from the
There's
Pacific.
the stone shirt.
But yes, I don't want to get off track. It's really, in many ways, it's a parody of The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
I took the themes and the lessons that are learned by Dorothy and plugged them into my Duet with Mick. But it is about my dream of having Mick Jagger do a duet with me, or just play harmonica, either one. But really, I would love him to do a duet, and that's what the show is about, pursuing that goal. So it's.
Have you ever had communication with him? Have you ever reached out to him?
Yes, I have. But to be honest, I wanted to keep a distance there. I never really had a conversation with him because I want to keep that quest of, keeping him on a pedestal so I can.
Right.
Because he basically is the wizard.
Right.
But with Wicked coming up, the movie version, even though that wizard comes off probably more evil or whatever, but no, Mick takes like the wizard role in my show of the unattainable force that I'm trying to get to, and the almighty type of godlike force. But with Wicked coming up, the movie finally in 2 parts, and it's a feminist piece, I think that I have a new angle on the show now. So I've already performed it, but I am revising it. It's being revised, and She's a Rainbow. It may evolve into that, or that may be a second show, but that is I think it will be the sequel to my Duet with Mick. And that's a Stone song, She's a Rainbow, but it also has, there's other themes to it. I don't want to give too much away at this point.
Just little teasers. You can go to the website to learn more as it's released and sprinkled. Couple of really cool photos we have here, and maybe instead of me setting it up, maybe I'll have you do it.
Oh yes, that's when I performed Bless the Beasts and Children at the Avalon for Circus Paws, which I mentioned earlier. And that's me kind of dressed, as Lily said, I look like a snow queen, but that was kind of like a fairy princess because it was all this animal-free circus, Le Petit Cirque, which is all children, like young children as a circus act, but they also sang backup for me. They did the background vocals.
Very
nice. Lainey Kazan actually helped me with the recording. She co-arranged it with Shelley Markham, who did the music. And, I added a Sondheim song in there. You have to kind of hear the recording, but it was a different version of Bless the Beasts and Children. And Lainey's granddaughter, Bella, was part of Le Petit Cirque, so she sang backup. You know what I'm saying? So it was like an All in the Family kind of recording. Yeah. And I was able to sing Bless the Beasts and Children many times, that version many times since then, with and without Le Petit Cirque, for different charity events and the 30th anniversary of Paws. And at Pat Derby, the late Pat Derby's memorial, who was the co-founder of Paws, Performing Animal Welfare Society, which I still support.
Which is beautiful. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about what was it like, on stage, taking on the iconic role so early as Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker. That is an extraordinary role to take on, Kat.
Well, I have to tell you, I felt I was guided.
Yeah.
I just went, I auditioned, but I had just done The Music Man, Gracie Music Man up in Washington State. And it was a woman director who was doing The Miracle Worker. So she just came, and I think I also was doing another play or another performance. She came to see that. And then I just, my mom tells me I started playing blind around the house before this ever came up. Like I was preparing to play Helen Keller. And so I just kind of knew what to do. I
wonder if that gave you an understanding and appreciation for people who have things that they go through in life early on, even taking on an iconic role like that, Kat, huh?
Yes. In fact, I've always played famous, or not always, but for the most part, famous women in history or famous young women. Anne Frank in The Diary of Anne Frank. She was known as Anna Frank. That was the pronunciation. And then I
Right.
did,
That's right.
I
You
also
are there.
sing Joan and the Lark. So I've done a lot of, but just those two right there, Helen Keller and Anne Frank, made, and they all are, social justice projects or issue oriented. So that really formed my interest in just seeking out projects that have something to say, have a message. I don't really think my father influenced me. I mean, he did, but it's probably in my DNA because of him. It's hard for me to do projects that don't have something to say. I can do something just for entertainment, and I have,
Right.
but just I gravitate towards, projects that have something to say or fit in with the issues I'm interested in.
Well, talking about voting and how apropos, I think is this out yet or coming out? You involved in civil disobedience too.
Yeah, we still have more to do on that, but
Yeah,
that's
this is exciting, huh?
yeah, it's in Linda Palmer. It's her production company with other writers and directors that have. Yes, it is, and there's a voting, as you mentioned, but I'm keeping that under wraps. There is a whole episode about voting
Because that's a
Yeah.
series, anthology
I
sort
really
of
wish that was
series.
coming out now because we really need it now.
Right. And so many other people too, when I was doing my research, putting things together, um, people that you've just had an opportunity to come across and meet. And I would imagine your father and your mother being in the industry. Was your father excited about you embarking in this industry, or your mother more than your father? Yeah.
Yeah, my father really didn't want any of his kids to go into the industry, and all of us have. Sadly, my half brother and sister, both passed away, but they were also in the business, and so was my sister Jennifer. So we all went into the entertainment industry in various ways. And he couldn't stop any of us from doing it. But I just think he thought it was, it's very much a hard business. It's rewarding, but it's just really hard. And there's a lot of negative aspects to it. But if it's something you have to do, I don't think anyone should stop you. And luckily, my mother saw my dedication and my sisters to the arts and to the industry, and carrying on his legacy in our own way and doing our own thing too. So that's why she's been so supportive. And because she was in it, it's always good to have that guidance. It's like the whole thing about being a nepo baby or whatever doesn't make sense to me, because in other businesses, kids go into the family business, even if they're bakers or shoe salesmen or attorneys or doctors. You still have to prove yourself. You still have to do your own.
Sometimes it's even harder because they know what it's about, so you're going to prove yourself more.
I've always found that it was much harder. The cons sometimes outweigh the pros. For me, I was just lucky to learn a lot and have an inside view, but nobody's ever handed me anything because of that. It has been really hard. And, I only mention it, and I'm proud of my heritage and my family. And that's why, because of the contributions, especially that my father made through social issues, and through film, and helping to change laws and change people's minds and be so brave bringing these issues to the forefront. I suppose if he'd just been an entertainment oriented, just making movies for the sake of entertainment, it wouldn't be such a hard road, but also wouldn't be something I would be as proud of either. So I'm very much an advocate of what he's accomplished through his films, and that's why I have always, been talking about him so much and making sure people know that I also come from a legacy that I have to keep going and protect, because he's always been so controversial, and also introduce new generations to his work.
Exactly.
The politics behind what he did too,
Your mother's incredible contributions too. And right, exactly right. Well, of course, the movies themselves, the things that he dealt with, like race, of course, with the Defiant Ones and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Like I mentioned, nuclear war with On the Beach, and then creationism versus evolution with, Inherit the Wind. And of course, there's Judgment at Nuremberg and so many other
Got to bring
really
up Judgment in Nuremberg. That's really important.
extraordinary.
And also, they just finished shooting Nuremberg, a new one, with Russell Crowe, who's also one of my very favorite actors and musicians. But, as an actor, I just went and saw The Exorcism. So the movie wasn't that great, but his performance is always amazing. And he's in that with Rami Malek and Michael Shannon. And it's one of the other trials, but it's still going to be Nuremberg for a new generation.
You mentioned earlier Liza Minnelli and Judy Garland, and your father worked with Judy Garland with A Child Is Waiting. Did he ever speak of what it was like working with Judy Garland at that point?
Oh, yeah, he did 2 films with her, Judgment at Nuremberg and A Child Is Waiting. Yeah, she was at her most vulnerable when he cast her in Judgment at Nuremberg. To be honest, I think she was having problems getting cast in anything. So she was very willing to take on that role, which was far from anything she'd ever done, and to be nominated and everything. And she was so amazing in the film. And then A Child Is Waiting was really the first time that, mentally retarded and Down syndrome kids were portrayed in the film. And he had real Down syndrome actors in there and children, besides the, not all of them were that were playing some of the roles, but for the most part they were. So again, that was Judy in 2 different kinds of roles. So, and he got to work with her towards the end, which, she wasn't in the best shape, but she was very professional and he had nothing but the most respect for her.
Which is quite beautiful to hear and reassuring to hear for everybody listening who's a fan of your father's work and a fan of Judy. Going back to, I think everybody is still thinking that you slammed the door on Katharine Hepburn. Well, I'm Cat too, and bye. Your godmother, namesake, really amazing. And you have been celebrating her. Again, for folks just tuning in, her godmother is Katharine Hepburn. The name Katharine, you were telling me before we went live on the air, this fabulous story about Katharine or Spencer as possible names and how that all worked out. And Spencer Tracy learned of it and Katharine Hepburn learned of it. Tell us that amazing, cute story.
Well, remember, this is coming from my mom, so I don't remember because, I wasn't.
You were a little infant. You were in a bassinet.
So how the story goes is when, when my mom was pregnant with me, it was decided that if I was a boy, I would be named Spencer. And if I was a girl, I would be Katharine. So that was already decided. There was no other names as an option. And so when I came out as a girl, Spencer was upset and sent a note to my parents from the loser. But Katharine sent a note with a christening dress saying, "She will forever be telling them spell it with an A." Because nobody ever spells her name right, and they don't spell mine right at all. I can even get like a letter or an email and it'll be right at the top and then wrong at the bottom. It's either so I used to go by Katie and Kate, but I finally decided on Kat. I was never really a Kathy, it's not my personality. I decided on Kat because she was known as Kat to close friends and family. So I often go as Katharine Kat Kramer, but most people just know me as Cat Kramer. So professionally, I'm Katharine Kramer, but now I'm also Kat. So that's the story of the christening dress and her note. And
that's the story of, that's the glory of love.
Spencer died, so I never got to meet him, but
yes, Spencer, right. Yeah. Really incredible, all of it, when you think about it. And you have been you are the West Coast representative and on the board of directors of the extraordinary Katharine Hepburn Cultural Arts Center, which is a spectacular venue about 20 minutes away north of New Haven, where Yale is. It's in the beautiful town, New England, Connecticut coastal town of Old Saybrook. And tell us about how this all came about. And that must be, it's full circle, isn't it? Here you are, the goddaughter of Katharine Hepburn. So early on, they open up this extraordinary venue in her name in the town where she lived. She was from, for anybody listening, she was from Hartford, Connecticut. She did the whole Hollywood thing, but then she came back east. She came back to where she was from, and she had a beautiful home in the Fenwick section of Old Saybrook, which jets out into the Long Island Sound and Connecticut River. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And the region created this spectacular cultural arts center that has all kinds of concerts and specials and movies and tributes, and not just Katharine Hepburn, but I mean, like I said, Lucy Arnaz has been there, Melissa Manchester, Judy Collins, so many extraordinary artists and all kinds of entertainment. How did this come about that you became a part of that beautiful organization and that wonderful venue?
Well, first of all, I would love to perform there. That's a goal, because I never have, whether it's singing or stand up. And they have so much.
I vote for that
music, and even the late Ed Asner had done this one-man show there.
That's right. Not long before he passed, actually.
Right. And so that's a dream, to play the Kate. But after she died, they, dedicated that to her, and they asked me to be the West Coast representative early on, and I helped get a lot of people on the board, or sometimes just in name only. But one, obviously, Catherine Houghton was part of it. Her niece, who was in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. My mom cast her in that, by the way, playing Joey, the daughter of Katharine Hepburn.
Did she really? I didn't know that.
She told my father, don't put Mary Hartley in there, was who he had in mind. Really cast her own niece, and that was Katherine Houghton's film debut. But I was lucky to get Kate Blanchett, because, as you know, she played Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator, and there's a little story there. I hosted a little champagne reception for her, saying, I really think you're going to win the Academy Award. I just had a hunch about it, and she wasn't sure, because it's always hard when you're playing someone like Katharine Hepburn, but she's such a great actress that she did embody her. And I gave her part of the christening dress that had been given to my parents when she sent the note, spell it with an A, and she said she took the petticoat with her to the Oscars as good luck. I didn't even know that until afterwards. She won, and then she christened her own son in the same part of the petticoat. So it was the actual under part of the petticoat, so it was part of the whole thing. So that's a great story. And so it all evolved from there, and I gotten I believe Mark Rydell, who directed On Golden Pond. I've reached out to different people through the years to be on the advisory board, and I have been instrumental in approving or helping to select the Spirit of Katharine Hepburn Award, which they have, and they do a great job over there anyway with that. So I just have tried to help them, get the right person each year. But a lot of people really want that award. It's so important. And
they've given it to Candice Bergen.
Sam Waterston.
Cher got it as well.
Yes, yeah. And Cher came to Cat Kramer's Films That Changed the World, the third installment, the first one Lily did with me, Elephants and Man, A Litany of Tragedy. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I wasn't that aware until she received the Spirit of Katharine Hepburn Award that my godmother had been such a big influence on her. So that was
Cher. Right.
There's so many deserving people. It's just a matter of getting them to go. It's such an amazing experience,
Yeah, and her house is, her house is right down the road from it. Obviously, it was sold to a couple in New York, but a lot of people do walk and bike and drive by that area because it's so stunningly beautiful. But again, it's just so full circle that you are. She would be. I've always wondered. I can't surprise. I'm very surprised I haven't asked anybody this that I know that's at the theater, because I know a lot of the folks that are at the theater, and I've the board of directors, the staff, the volunteers, a lot of volunteers, and
Oh,
I've been to
thing.
the volunteers are the thing.
They just reopened the museum recently.
That's right, and it's stunning.
And I want to go there and spend a lot more time. That's a goal of mine for the future.
Well, let me know when you are, because I'll be right over there. And it's just a warm, comfortable place, and knowing that that's where she lived, and right next door in the town of Westbrook lived Art Carney.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They said he used to drive his black Camaro, and he'd go into the deli for a sandwich, and he was just a regular guy, like Norton on The Honeymooners, just a regular guy in the town, as Katharine too.
Right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and what she would be, how do you feel she would feel about this fabulous cultural arts center celebrating and dedicated to her? I'm sure she'd be honored by it.
Yes and no. I mean, obviously,
right. Part of it she would
I
like.
think she didn't want a lot of fanfare.
The attention, right?
She didn't want any of that, but she got it anyway because she should have.
Right.
But I'm sure if she was around now, she would be very honored and happy that she was able to give back to the community and the arts, and have that there as a thriving artistic venue.
I want to make mention too, because this is literally, pun intended, hot off the presses, but you are a writer as well. As I mentioned, singer, actress, journalist, filmmaker, a myriad of things. I thought I was busy. You do it all. You've written an article that just came out too, right?
2 of them. Well,
Congratulations.
I've been a journalist
a
long time. I had a children's story published when I was like 5 years old.
But of course,
I'm working on a book. That's the thing. But I'm afraid, obviously, of. I don't know if afraid is the right word. I just always feel I need to, writing a book or a script is different than writing an article. But that's how I keep my tools oiled. But the Tolucan Times was my home for 15 years, if not longer. And I had a column in there, and I even had one-on-one interviews. And then they did a couple stories on me, and I was on the cover. And I branched out and wrote for Entertainment Today and the Produced By magazine, which is through the Producers Guild, and different publications. But the Tolucan Times sadly closed during the pandemic, and the owner, Marty Rustum, who really gave me a chance there, he passed away just over the last couple of years. So the Tolucan had no home at that point, and it basically closed. The office closed, and there was no publication. And then friends of the family and supporters of the family ended up purchasing it, and they're young and very, motivated to get this publication out there again. So they just started it in September of last year, and it's monthly now. It used to be weekly. It's monthly, but it's very amazing with the graphics. It's very representative of the community at large, the Toluca Lake community and the surrounding areas, and it's growing and expanding. So I wrote a piece about Charles Fox getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And then that was the spring issue. I have something in the June issue about my own event, Celebrating Laughter, and I'll be contributing as long as I can. Yeah.
And Charles Fox, of course, that prolific composer, arranger, the Love Boat and Love American Style. I mean, every theme you can think of, and just tons of beautiful music. He's an iconic composer and arranger, and just visionary, responsible for decades of music, soundtrack of our lives in many respects. So you had an opportunity to be a part of that, and also the Hollywood Museum too, right there at the old Max Factor building. I have yet to get there. So many people, Jim, when you come out to LA, you got to come here.
They have a whole exhibit of Mad World there. And they even have some of the dummies, the like dolls on a bench there. I mean, you really have to see it. I can't describe them. You have to see them in person.
Yeah.
And I Travel the 70s was featured there as an exhibit. And, my mom worked with Abbott and Costello on their show. So she was speaking for the Abbott and Costello exhibit. And then I was asked for the Joseph of Hollywood.
We had Lou Costello's daughter on, Chris Costello, on recently. She's wonderful, celebrating her dad as well.
Yeah, so the Hollywood Museum is a rare place, and Donnell Dodigan, who owns it, and is another amazing person who keeps the legacy of Hollywood alive, and film and television shows, and it's really definitely amazing. A great sense of community there too when you're at the museum.
Had an opportunity, as I mentioned, to work with so many different people or come across them, like the wonderful Carol Burnett.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, she's a legend.
Isn't she one of the sweetest people on the planet? When I met her just a few years back, had a wonderful conversation with her. She is, and I always tell everybody, from my perspective, I'm sure you agree, everything that people would hope. She's warm, she's funny, she's real, she's approachable, no airs about her. She's there and empathetic, and that's refreshing oftentimes, right?
Yes, and she's on Palm Royale, which is one of my favorite new shows on Apple, and great performance. That's really a very fun and true to life show. I think they really captured.
You always look stunning. I know you've heard this from a million people. You always look stunning anytime you leave the house. All the time, you take the time to do that, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that adds just to the effervescence of you.
Well, my mom instilled that in me for the old school Hollywood. There's some that carry it on, but basically to always dress a certain, not to disappoint your fans. But when I'm playing a role, I will completely be unglamorous and have from Helen Keller on. And in roles that I'm choosing now, they're not glamour roles. So I think it's important to differentiate between, as an entertainer too, and as a singer, a certain image, and then that I can work against that when I'm acting.
Perfect way to put it. Absolutely perfect way to put that. Another one too, Dustin Hoffman.
Oh yes, he's always been one of my idols. Always for their work, they're just the consummate actors, filmmakers, singers, performers, writers, whatever they are. And a lot of them have directed and produced.
There's a nice group shot.
That's when Lily got the Art Gilmore Award from the
Joanne Worley's there, and George Slater.
Wow. I was so happy to open the show there, and I also opened with that performance of Dear Lily Tomlin, the musical parody, the HMP Celebrity Showcase channel. So that was the very first episode, was that. And since then they've showed all, not all of, but most of the people that spoke for Lily, and they've had Johnny Mathis and, so many on that, on that channel that were celebrated by the Pacific Pioneer broadcasters. You know how many people in that picture have passed away since then? And that was not that long ago. That was just in 2012. It's not that long ago. And there's only a few left in that picture. So, yeah.
It's amazing. So that's why you cherish these moments and cherish these things that we're talking about here, and cherish life. And, as much as we're talking about all this fantastic material, comedy and love is so important. I say music and comedy are the great healers. They are a universal language, and you are really big with the comedy part. Yeah. Are we going to see more? Are we going to get more of Kat's comedy?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I performed some of that during Halloween. So I have a show that's universal, but it can work year round, but it would, especially this new show I'm working on, would be good during Halloween because it's scary. It's got scary themes. So I would like to do that hopefully this year. at least perform an excerpt or do something during Halloween. That's a good time to do comedy because we need to laugh during that.
Yeah, I think we're going to need it in November too.
For sure.
Make sure you do double headers.
Yeah, for sure. We will need it.
We will need it on all levels. I do want to show our viewers who have been commenting and welcoming you and celebrating you throughout with these really beautiful comments that they've been saying. Steve Bird saying, watching, good to see you, Steve. If there were 3 words to describe Kat Kramer, those would be glamorous, creative, and multi-talented. I second that emotion, Steve. Very kind of you to say that, and everybody who's been commenting. If you would like to learn more and really dig in deep, you can go to her website. And the website is a beautiful website. It's very, very interactive. And KatharineKramer.com. She made it very easy, breezy for you. So you can check that out. That is really fantastic. And again, if you want to, and of course, you can learn more about this, which is very near and dear to her heart. She rose for change and some of the things that we've been talking about at the website as well. And if you want to learn more about Kat Kramer's films that changed the world, and what we showed was just some of them. There are many more that she's had an opportunity to spotlight right there on the screen. Kat Kramer's films that changed the world.com is available for your perusal as well. An extraordinary conversation. I was really, really looking forward to it. Several different levels. Of course, I've always admired and been a fan of your father's extraordinary work. And as I mentioned, you and I were talking before we went live on the air. Some of his creations are some of my favorites and my family's favorites. Your mother's incredible beauty and talent as well, and her contributions, and your family and yours. When I had an opportunity to chat with you and the team about having you come on, I was absolutely over the moon because you are a ray of sunshine. You are a bundle of energy and of passion and heart, humor and soul, Kat Kramer. And though you come from an iconic Hollywood family, you have carved out your own niche, who you are, surrounded by all of this incredibleness, but you have your own path and you've stayed true to form to it and authentic. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's one of the many reasons why people admire and respect and love you, Kat, as we do here. And I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you.
Oh, I did. And again, thank you so much for all the amazing comments. And I'm overwhelmed by it, seriously. And I hope I can live up to just a little portion of everything you've said. And I'm happy that I was able to be here today. It worked out great.
It really has. Absolutely. And as I say to everybody, we will keep the porch light on for you, Kat. So you are welcome back anytime. Just want to show you a couple of quick comments, more of our levity. I was telling Kat about the Jim Master Show, levity, light, love, and levity. Thanks for being here, Kat. This was a great conversation. Loved it. Good luck with all you do. Continued blessings. Kathleen watches in New York City. Okay. Sherry is in the Heartland, Kansas. Thank you, Kat, for being here with us tonight. What a wonderful life you've had so far. Thank you for sharing it with us. Best wishes in all you do in the future. Thank you for Sherry's comments and everybody that's commenting. We've got comments coming in from around the world. Maureen says in Arizona, you are a wonderful human, Kat. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. You make this world a better place. And Jane watching in Sweden, thanks, Kat, for being here tonight, telling us about your background and all the hard work you do. And thank you, Jim, as well. Kat and I thank you, Jane in Sweden, and everybody for all this levity coming our way. We really appreciate it.
Levity is my new favorite word.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You heard it here.
Yes. Those were amazing comments. Thank you so much for sharing those.
That's the vibe. You know, of course, Merv Griffin, Regis Philbin, Johnny Carson, Dick Cavett, all of these greats who I've always admired as well. So when I started this series, playing off my television and radio work, during the pandemic. I wanted to create something similar, warm, free-flowing, conversational. We hit a lot of different topics. We learn about each other. The viewers are watching, kind of like our studio audience. They're excited, they're participating. And it's a full circle feeling for everybody. And I hope you got that vibe on the show, Kat.
I absolutely did. I'm really honored to be here, to have done this show.
The pleasure is all ours. And here's a funny line my father said that you'll appreciate. Father from New York as well. My father said when I was 7 years old, you know how your father and mother are giving you sage advice. My father told me when I was 7, Jimmy, whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, always make sure you thank them for those kind words. Then
I agree.
Ask them to please take those kind words, put them in writing, and address it management.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I use that too, for sure.
Yeah, it's that New York humor, I tell you. Gets you every time. Kat Kramer, you're a blessing. Come see us again. Hopefully we'll see you maybe at the Kate as well. Let's stay in touch.
Oh,
if you're coming to the Northeast.
Yes.
New friend made. And thanks to the family and the team and everybody. You've got amazing people around you, and we really appreciate them for working with us to put it all together as well.
Thank you for your team.
Absolutely. It takes a village.
My godmother would be so happy. She always said, be fascinating. And she would think that you are fascinating indeed.
I appreciate that very, very much. You be well, Kat, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Stay safe.
You as well. Blessings to you and the family, and congratulations on everything. And we expect to see more soon.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care. Incomparable Katharine Kat Kramer stopping by the Jim Masters Show Live Entertainment Lifestyle Celebrity Talk Show series. How special was that? Was that not amazing? We thoroughly enjoyed presenting this for you. She is, again, Hollywood royalty, comes from Hollywood royalty, but what's beautiful about her is she's refreshing, she's authentic, she's the real deal. She's got a real quick wit about her. She's a real curious person as well. You know, she loves life. She loves digging in deep. She likes solving problems. She likes figuring things out. She likes bringing people together, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we came together on this episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series with all of you. How cool to have her here on the show. We'll have her back, of course. She graced us with her wit and wisdom. Again, here are some websites to go to check out. There's her website to check out everything that she's doing and upcoming performances and documentaries. I mean, as she said, she's got so much going on. I mentioned, of course, she was Miss Golden Globe ambassador as well. We talked about that earlier as well. And this is something near and dear to her heart, Kat Kramer's Films That Changed the World. Go to the website there to learn more. Wonderful stories about Angela Lansbury and Mame and some of the other people in this industry that she has admired and that's sort of, been mentors to her, people that she's been inspired by as well. And of course, we talked extensively about her body of work, not just on camera and on stage, but also off camera as well, which is exquisitely beautiful work. She gives back in so many ways, shapes, and forms that I think is long lasting and very, very important. And of course, we talked about her iconic father, the one and only Stanley Kramer, who was responsible for decades and decades of extraordinary movies. There's hers too. She's, again, I know you're going to look for these too, right? When she was in all of these, there's De Niro in that one. She worked with him in that as well. Some others. And these are just a few, folks. These are just a few because there's so many in all the shows and everything. And then, of course, Stanley Kramer, her dad. I mean, guess who was coming to dinner? It's a Mad World. I mean, Judgment at Nuremberg. I mean, this is Americana. And then her lovely mom, Karen Sharpe Kramer. and a Golden Globe winner, and The High and Mighty. And you know what's really cool is these other things like On the Beach and some of these reprises that are happening that she's working on, celebrating her iconic, family, her dad, the whole thing. I think that's really, really special. And that is what she is working on. Great behind the scenes stories about Bless the Beasts and Children, this wonderful Stanley Kramer production, And of course, her wonderful friendship with Lily Tomlin, which has dated back a number of years, and how they have worked together on lots of projects. They have a mutual fondness and respect and appreciation for one another's contributions. And they're on the same page about so many things, which I think is really, really something special. And there they are together with her mom, Karen, as well. And we also talked about the singing. Yes, her fabulous singing. And again, as this comes out, she's working on that for the release and things of that nature, celebrating the music of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. She's a Rolling Stone aficionado. Keep an eye on that as well. As that comes out, you might be able to find it there eventually. So keep an eye on that as well, for the great, beautiful voice of Kat. And of course, if you ever get a chance to catch her in one of her shows, she's an epic performer. So, and the comedy, she's got you covered. She does it all. She sings, she dances, she produces, she makes you laugh, she makes you cry, she makes you think. Chip off the old blocks, I guess, Really, she's got her feet in everything. When she sleeps, I don't know. When I sleep, I don't know. Wonderful stories about her godmother, the incomparable Katharine Hepburn. We've been watching lately. It's funny because the timing of Kat coming on the show is ironic because we've been watching over the last several months, like everything Katharine Hepburn, all the movies with Spencer, without Spencer. So it just is so apropos. Wonderful stories about Colin Higgins, of course, as well, and the celebration of laughter and all the other things, the wonderful celebration of Marsha Hunt, just touching upon some of the amazing things that she has her hands in. So one more time, we want to say a very loving thank you to Katharine Kat Kramer for joining us here on the Jim Masters Show live series. We thank her for being with us. And we also thank you for being with us as well, folks. If you enjoyed this episode on the YouTube channel, give this episode a like. There's a thumbs up like icon. Give it a like. Drop a comment. What's your favorite movie or performance that Kat has been in, or Stanley, her father, created some of these iconic movies, and of course her mom's epic work. Tell us about it in the comments section. Share this episode on your social media, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For all who have done that, we say thank you very much for your kindness, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. And one more thing, we like to thank everybody. Welcome to the Jim Masters Show live entertainment lifestyle celebrity talk show series. If this was your first time here watching around the world, come see us again. We will keep the porch light on for you. As we mentioned, it's on for Kat and all of our epic guests that come in from all around the world. Yes, Katharine Hepburn was definitely a fabulous actress, Hollywood icon. I agree 100%. Sherry. Thanks, everybody. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, reminding you that all of the episodes, the hundreds of episodes with celebrity friends and guests, you can see archived on the YouTube channel in full. If you joined us late on this episode, you can see it all again on the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Come see us again and enjoy all of it. For all of us here, you be well. Take care. Don't forget to love one another. Take care of one another. And don't forget to love yourself. It's important to do that. Be well. I'm Jim Masters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one. And cheers.